Now, the New York Times is reporting that the Trump administration has announced a plan designed to make it easier for coal-fired power plants to release more mercury and other pollutants into the atmosphere. Now, this comes, not long after the reports that we should stop fossil fuels, that we should keep them in the ground, and that we should stop burning coal and transition to 100% renewable energy before the world turns into a giant ball of fire. But of course, we're not going to go in that direction, at least under the Trump administration. But this rule specifically, as I said, deals with mercury and other smaller pollutants. Now, it turns out during the Obama administration, President Obama had put some limits on mercury. Now, apparently, they were the first federal standards to restrict some of the most hazardous pollutants emitted by coal plants, and were considered one of President Obama's signature environmental achievements. Which, of course, if you're President Trump, you look at that and rage, and then say, I'm going to get rid of it. Anything that the black guy does, I have to undo. And that's exactly what they're doing. Now, since this was put into place in 2011, scientists had said that mercury pollution from power plants had declined more than 80% nationwide. So that's actually a really good thing, having less mercury in the air. But the Republicans look at it, and Trump looks at it and says, no, we must have more mercury. The mercury levels are just too low. They're very sad. We need to get more mercury in the air. We need to do it now. And so that's what they're doing. Now, the thing about this is they're not necessarily repealing the regulation, right? Now, it's known as the Mercury and Air Toxic Standards. It's not a repeal of that, but it would lay the groundwork for doing so by weakening a key justification for the measure. Now, that justification, of course, I will get into a little bit later. But first, let's go to the impact, right? So now, what it would do is it would immediately weaken the ability of the EPA to impose new regulations in the future by adjusting the way the agency measures the benefits of curbing pollutants. And what I mean by that is that in their determination of the cost-benefit analysis, they're going to give a lot less weight to potential health gains and really only look at economic losses versus economic gains. Now, in announcing the proposed rule, the Environmental Protection Agency said in a statement that the cost of cutting mercury from power plants dwarfs the monetary benefits. So what they're saying is, it just costs too much to get rid of this mercury in the air. I don't care. We don't care about health effects. That's not a big factor in our decision. What's a big factor is money. How much money these people that own these coal-fired power plants are going to save without this regulation. It's so costly, right? So now, here's the thing. What benefit is there other than rich people saving a few dollars? Well, there is no benefit. The only benefit is to rich people. It's not going to lower your bills. It's not going to do anything other than, of course, get more mercury into the atmosphere, which, of course, will end up leading to negative health impacts. Now, speaking of the coal barons who will benefit from this, the New York Times mentions that reworking the mercury rule, which the EPA considers the priciest clean air regulation ever put forth in terms of annual cost to industry, would represent a victory for the coal industry. And in particular, Robert E. Murray, head of Murray Energy. Now, interestingly enough, right? So now we have Andrew Wheeler in charge of the EPA. So turns out Andrew Wheeler knows Robert Murray. In fact, he worked for Robert Murray as a lobbyist. Now, Mr. Murray, the chief executive of Murray Energy, personally requested the rollback of the mercury rule soon after Mr. Trump took office. And now Wheeler, now in the position of leading the EPA, since Scott Pruitt is gone, said, yes, sir, I will remove it at once. And so they're not necessarily removing it, but they are changing the way it works in order to get rid of it in the future. So now, The whole idea of having Wheeler, who is a former coal lobbyist, be in charge of the EPA that regulates things like coal emissions, is deeply problematic. But anyone can look at this and see that this is textbook corruption. Oh, here you have a coal lobbyist now kowtowing to a rule that a coal baron specifically asked for as soon as the administration got into power. Gee, what a coincidence. No, not a coincidence at all. But here's what's interesting about this, right? You know who doesn't like this rollback? Utility companies. Now, you would think utility companies would be all in favor of this, right? No, it turns out that since 2011, they already spent the money to upgrade their system. In fact, they spent about $18 billion installing clean air technology since the rule was imposed. And they're now saying, yeah, well, we already spent that money. What's the point of rolling back this rule? I mean, we fought against it during the Obama administration, but now we already have the stuff installed. What's the point? And they have urged the Trump administration to leave the measure in place, to basically leave it alone. In fact, Jeffrey Homestead, partner at the law firm Bracewell, who served as EPA air chief under the second president, George Bush, said, quote, "There's nobody who operates power plants who was asking for the rule to go away." He also said that the agency managed to walk a very fine line by revising the justification for the rule while leaving pollution protections in place. But that line, of course, is meant to be violated later on when people aren't paying attention. Now, the original rule required power plants to reduce emissions of mercury and other toxic pollutants by more than 90% over 5 years. That was the original rule. And now, like I said, they're going to be able to roll that back piece by piece. Now, there's a reason for this rule, by the way, and it's not just because, oh, liberals hate industry. We have a war on coal. No. Here's the thing. This pollution, this mercury is classified as a neurotoxin that can damage the brain and nervous system in especially young children. Now, that leads, of course, to lower IQ and impaired motor skills. Now, do you guys want that in the air you breathe? I don't. And we all breathe the same air. It's not like air is, sequestered in one spot and you only breathe air over there. No, it's all our air. And I don't want mercury in all of our air. Now, furthermore, the impact of this, according to the Obama administration estimates, the measure would prevent as many as 11,000 premature deaths from asthma and other respiratory diseases or heart attacks. So they put this rule in, and they estimate that it could save 11,000 people's lives by doing this rule. Okay, and the rule is already in place now, so there's actually no reason to get rid of it. But Robert Murray says, no, I want to get rid of it because I hate any and all coal regulation. So you're going to do it because you were my lobbyist. I paid you. And I will probably pay you again as soon as you get out of office. And that's what's going on here. Now, not only that, but yes, there are huge health impacts. Also, the Obama administration found that up to $6 million annually in health benefits would be basically given directly from curbing mercury. So that's important, right? So that's what they're going to look at now with this rule change instead of what I'm going to tell you now. This is another stat. The Obama administration also found an additional $80 billion in health benefits a year by, among other things, preventing the 11,000 premature deaths. That came not from curbing mercury itself, but from the reduction in particulate matter linked to heart and lung disease that also occurs when cutting mercury emissions. So there's actually something that they call that, and that is a indirect benefit, right? Now, the new rule wants to only look at direct benefits. So $80 billion and saving 11,000 people, they're not going to consider that. all they're going to look at is it saves $6 million annually in direct health benefits. They can now contrast that with the upcoming cost that it costs industry and make a decision based on that. And of course, what they're going to find out when they do that is, look how much it costs in industry versus how much it saves. Oh, so inefficient. We're going to have to get rid of this regulation. And look, they made this decision. They made this plan, by the way, by basically trying to make the argument that you can't really accurately quantify health benefits. Now, again, the Trump administration says, we don't care about health benefits, so we're not even going to try to want to quantify them or add this in. We want to separate them. The new proposal would consider only benefits that can directly be translated into dollars and cents. They said the proposed rule recognizes that difficult to quantify benefits exist, but said the administrator has concluded that the identification of these benefits is not sufficient in light of the gross imbalance of monetized costs. Business groups also say that the rule should only count the direct benefits of curbing the main pollutant in question and not what are termed to be co-benefits when considering the economic impact of a regulation. So it's not just this regulation, it's also other regulations as well. And that's how it bleeds into these other regulations and actually makes it much more difficult to pass regulations, making sure that our environment is protected. And not only environment, but also health. So that's how they're trying to do it. So how is that for a science-based approach? Hey man, we know that this thing has many co-benefits, but we're only going to count the one main benefit so that we can look at it and get in and basically say that it costs too much for that specific benefit. And you know why they're doing it. Look, people that want something to be calculated in a way that show the cost outweighing health benefits want to do it this way. And it gets worse. With that legal justification for the regulation weakened, experts say the rule could more easily be overturned if challenged in court and could, as I said, make it more difficult for future regulations. And that's the point. Why don't we just admit it? Republicans want to poison your kids. That's it. They want to poison your kids so that they can save a few bucks. That's the whole effect of this rule change. Let's poison your kids with mercury. Let's make sure that it's more likely for you to get asthma or have heart attacks or strokes or other medical related problems related to pollution, these toxic substances. And they want to do that, poison you, poison your family, poison your children, poison your community, your dirty your water, your air, all so that they can make an extra dollar. And by them, I mean, of course, the coal barons and people who profit off of pollution. And not just them, but the people who work as their lobbyists. And of course, in this case, you've got coal company, barons that have their lobbyists that literally run the EPA. This is happening at a time where we need bold action and a Green New Deal. And yet here we have this textbook corruption from Andrew Wheeler and Donald Trump and the Trump administration, Republicans, deregulating coal, deregulating mercury. This has to end. We need bold action. We've got to get these guys out of office. We've got to end the corruption, get money out of politics so that we can save our health and our world. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.